Hey y'all, welcome back. Today we're checking out the death of Britain's most feared subculture.
If you were a teenager today and your hair looked like this, you'd be on Ryanair looking for flights to Turkey to go and get it fixed.
Just spray GLH on and it instantly covers your bald spot.
However, back in the 60s through to the late 80s, if you had this haircut, it was very likely that you were part of Britain's most feared and controversial subculture.
Skinhead.
Skinhead.
Skinhead. Skinhead.
Skinheads.
The Skinheads.
Oh. Yeah. You don't really see skinheads around anymore. They're usually just bald men who have decided to take it all off.
So if you look at these people, it might shock you to find out the inspirations and the origins of this subculture. Just have a guess. Where do you think they're from? You know, just wild guess.
Germany.
Jamaica.
What?
That's right. Jamaica was the influence for much of the skinhead movement. Basically what happened is after World War II, England looked like the back of a co-op, you know, just rubbish everywhere. It was shit. We were destroyed after World War II.
Okay.
And so the politicians of this country hopped on the phone and got in touch with our beloved colonies. Our colonies who, you know, we had a history of sort of not treating very well. We said, guys, how about, you know, you leave sunny Jamaica, there's nothing for you there, mate, and come on over to grey, rainy Britain. You can rebuild our country, work long hours for very little money. And somehow the Jamaicans heard that and went, why not? Rude boys. It was a subculture that arose from like the poorer parts of Jamaica in Kingston. It was often associated with gangsters, badaman, yardies, and their fashion was heavily influenced by what the US jazz and soul musicians were wearing.
Okay.
Everything would change somewhere in the 60s when the Rude Boys would meet a very English subculture, the mods. The mods were those modern daddies, you know, they were them boys who loved dressing smart. They were really about the future. And they were kind of, I guess, quite materialistic, quite consumerist.
Yo, I've heard of these mods. I did a reaction to mods and teddy boys. They did not get along. Just so I had this straight in my mind. After World War II, Britain needed laborers. They said, hey, Jamaicans, come over and labor. And the Jamaicans said, okay. But then they met the mods. Do they get along or do they not get along? Do they battle?
And they just had money to spend on things they enjoyed. But it'd be one day when, you know, Mikey the mod was fixing his Vespa and he looked up and he saw something. A rude boy. Their eyes locked. They took a step closer. A rush of emotions spread across their body. Confusion, excitement. The rude boy would come in with his cool fist bump handshake thing and the mod would awkwardly stutter and accidentally give him a hug. But the rude boys and the mods started to notice they had some things in common. But you see, towards the late end of the 60s, there was a split that was happening within the mods. The more like working class mod was starting to dress a bit different than the smooth mods. They realized that the long mod haircut was a disadvantage when you got into fights because they could just grab it and pull you. So some of the mods started to shave their head for like practical reasons, down to 2 or 3, and some of them started to grow out their sideburns.
This is why the Romans had that hair. Caesar for war. Okay, that's why skinheads do it. So you got nothing to pull on. Now, the sideburns would make it really easy to yank on, right? You could yank on that. You get your hand right there, get a handful of the short and curlies.
Number two. Yeah, and cut part in as well, please.
Ever so slowly, by the end of the 60s, the clean-cut, polished, middle-class mod was morphing into something different. The skinhead.
Wait, so mods became skin... Oh, that's so weird. Because I thought mods would become hippies. First of all, what exactly is a rude boy? Rude boy is a subculture that originated from 1960s Jamaican street culture. In the late 1970s, there was a revival of England of the terms of rude boy and rude girl, among the variations like rude boy and rude boy being used to describe fans of two-tone and ska. This revival of the subculture and term was partially the result of Jamaican immigration. Jamaican innovation in the UK. Sorry. The use of these terms moved into the more contemporary ska punk movement. Okay, the Jamaicans influenced the mod and skinhead culture. Ah, the term rude boy and rude boy fashions came back into use after the two-tone band The Specials and their record label Two Tone Records instigated a brief but influential ska revival. The Clash contributed Rude Can't Fail on London Calling. Wow, I would not have expected this.
You gotta bear in mind that during the 60s, whilst all this is going on, there is also another fun group of bros called the hippies. And the hippies were like, they were just too nice. They were all love and peace and soppy, bollocksy shit. The skinheads started to appear as like a rebellion against that, in a way. It would appeal to teenagers who were more looking for like this aggressive, more macho, masculine look. They would wear Doc Marten boots, they would wear these like button-up t-shirts, they would wear braces, Levi 501 jeans with the bottoms turned up, maybe a Fred Perry t-shirt, and of course, a shaved buzz cut head. Now, it wasn't completely bald, but as I say, like a 2 or a 3. But there was a big part of this bustling new subculture that was very important. And this would really be the thing that tied it all together. And that was the music.
I want all you skinheads to get up on your feet. Put your braces together and your boots on your feet.
Yo, this is so weird because when I think of skinheads, I think of bigots. I think of Nazis, or excuse me, neo-Nazis. I think of like white supremacists. Anti-Jamaican. I'm very confused.
And give me some of that old moon stomping.
One tune that was really like the anthem of the skinhead was called Skinhead Moonstomp. It was by a band called Cimarip, which were a Jamaican band, and what started to happen, as I mentioned, was these Jamaican communities were starting to interact with the more working class elements of white British culture. This was happening a lot in and around London, where these people tend to be working the same sort of manual labour jobs. And so the music started to mix, and you were hearing these young white British kids listening to like ska, rocksteady, and very early reggae music. And it created this very strange juxtaposition. You'd have these very working class white boys who were hanging out with Jamaican kids. Meanwhile, their dad was like a sworn racist. Little Billy would come home to hear his dad ranting about how the immigrants had taken his job. And then little Billy would go, "All right, Dad, I'll see you later. I'm just going to go hang out with Little Winston and listen to some reggae." And it was cool because these kids were really rebelling against their parents, but they were doing it in a very positive way. You know, they were breaking down racial barriers and sharing culture.
Wow. So if the dad is a bigot, they're rebelling against that. They're anti-bigot. Right. Okay. This makes sense. When does it flip?
Of combination of two cultures really created its very distinct thing with the skinhead. And the funny thing about the style is that the original shop that started selling it, the Ivy shop in Richmond, intended for the look to be like a preppy American college middle class look, but it ended up in the hands of the skinheads who made it very street, hard, macho kind of look.
The Ivy shop. Is it still there? Let's see. Show me on a map. Oh. There's one in Los Angeles. Yeah, I don't think it's, oh, permanently closed. I guess it's gone. Moving on.
So what is a skinhead?
People won't give you a chance. They only see the outside. They don't see what's really inside the person.
The skinhead subculture was massive in the late 60s. It was well within mainstream consciousness. Everyone knew what a skinhead was. There were famous books being written about skinheads. As well, a band called Slade tried to be skinhead for a few weeks, I guess, as like a marketing gimmick.
Some of the pubs I played on a Saturday night in the Black Country, when people were pissed up, and Saturday night was fighting night.
Which is kind of hilarious when you see what they ended up looking like. However, as big and as popular as the skinheads were becoming, there was one group that did not love the skinheads, and that was everyone else. 1969 is considered the golden age of the skinhead. At the same time, there was a few things going on in Britain. Football hooliganism was rife, you know, bros just beating the shit out of each other over football. And considering the fact that many football hooligans were young men, quite a few of those young men would just happen to be skinheads because it kind of made sense. And so what we would start to see is that any problem of like crime, drugs, gang activity, football hooliganism, it wasn't unlikely that some of the people doing some of that stuff were also wearing your Doc Martens and looking like skinheads.
And therefore they think I'm wasting myself. I mean, maybe I am. But I feel that's up to me. It's my own choice. I do what I like.
I do what I like.
I've got no way about getting up for work, And, oh, is my work up to standard? Will I get the sack? I mean, no one can put me down any further because I'm ready at the bottom, aren't I?
What about your 401k? What are you going to do when you get old and sick?
Before we go any further with this video, I want to give a massive shout out to Squarespace for sponsoring. Squarespace is the #1 platform for building and developing.
Y'all be sure to go to Squarespace, click that and like and subscribe and buy stuff. Blah, 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 blah.
Anyway, back to the video.
Violent crime has soared by 17% in the past year, and it's there in the streets around the corner.
Angry skinheads would just go out, get into fights, and just terrorize polite society. And it's true, there was very much a deep hatred and anger that was present within the skinhead movement.
Here, these seconds, Black Bones, we hate them. We hate the Big Lamp, hate Wrighton, hate nearly all the crews, New Biggin, we hate New Biggin.
What?
Now hate us, you know what I mean?
But you see,
I don't know what you mean. The only thing I knew that you meant was, you know what I mean. Let's put some captions on.
A deep hatred and anger that was present within the skinhead movement.
Here, these seconds, Black Bones, we hate them. We hate the Big Lamp, hate Wrighton, hate nearly all the crews, New Biggin, we hate New Biggin. Now hate us, you know what I mean?
But you see,
I think he said, we hate Black Bones, we hate Big Lamp, and now they hate us. I heard the word hate a few times. So, okay, all right. That tracks with skinheads.
Crews, New Biggin, we hate New Biggin. Now hate us, you know what I mean?
But you see, 1969 is also...
Is it just me, or does he look like Joe Strummer? Oh, is that Joe Strummer? Look at that. That, and that, that, and that. I guess it's not him. This guy's eyes are farther apart. They're wider set. But they are probably related.
Now hate us, you know what I mean?
But you see, 1969 is also 1 year after a very controversial speech was made by a Conservative MP known as Enoch Powell.
Enoch? Rivers of blood.
Where basically, at the time, a complex range of problems spread across England. We were starting to have economic decline from having global competition when it came to manufacturing. There was very bad relations between the management class and like the labor union class.
Okay.
Really shit city planning that just built these depressing cities in England that people hated. There was an energy crisis. Britain was deindustrializing. A lot of shit was happening.
Damn.
And Enoch Powell saw all of that and went, nah, it's the immigrants.
Hey, you're lucky I came tonight, you know, because I won't be here tomorrow. Enoch Powell has offered me £1,000 to go home. Which is great, really, because it's only £10 on the train from here to Birmingham.
Sadly, in the...
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, that's funny. Let's look up Enoch Powell. With a name like Enoch, probably gonna have some hate in your heart. British politician, scholar, and writer. He was a member of Parliament. He died in 1998. How did he die? Poop. Did he poop to death? Oh my gosh, this guy's Wikipedia's... Look at that. How much... Okay. Here's his death. A few hours following Powell's final admission to King Edward VII's Hospital in London, he asked where his lunch was. On being told that he was being fed intravenously, he remarked, "I don't call that much of a lunch." What a bitchy man. These were his last recorded words. Just a complaint. On February 8th, he died there at the age of 85. Powell was survived by his widow, blah, 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 blah. How did he die? They're not mentioning how he died, so he probably pooped to death. That's what happens. That's the main killer of people.
Sadly, in the 60s, the immigrants that we asked to come in to rebuild our country after the war were now being used as like this scapegoat for all of the political failings of the politicians. And amongst all this, there would be one organization that would find itself in the spotlight. The National Front. The National Front wanted a racially homogenous Britain. They wanted everyone to be white and they wanted to get immigrants out. The skinheads presented an opportunity for the National Front, an organic youth movement that was heavily tied in football hooliganism. They were downtrodden working class people who had nothing to lose. And so they started to recruit skinheads outside of football games.
What?
with their magazine called Bulldog. This was an incredibly successful recruiting tool for the National Front. On top of this, they would also do big rallies. They would even have like discos. Slowly, some skinheads did start to trickle into the National Front.
This is where it
But
flipped.
it's very important that
Propaganda.
I stress that pretty much every single source I looked at made it very clear that the vast majority of skinheads were not in the National Front. They were not racist in this era. There was plenty...
Okay. Wow. That's so manipulative. Ugh. This whole thing's coming back around. I don't see many skinheads around, but the scary thing is they look like the rest of us. Can't tell who they are.
In the National Front, they were not racist in this era. There was plenty of black people who were skinheads. They just really loved the fashion and the music.
What does reggae... Is it your favourite music?
But of course.
Reggae? Yeah. Is it your favourite music? Yeah.
Yeah.
The original skinhead movement was completely apolitical. It wasn't even left or right. But, of course, the small subsection of skinheads who were racist, they were a bit more interesting for the media to talk about.
Higher employment in Britain, especially among the young and the unskilled, has made working-class whites ideal recruiting material for extreme right and left-wing political organisations.
Skinheads were getting tons of bad press. All over the newspaper, you would see stuff about hooligans, criminals, drug dealers, and hate crimes.
Journalist Alan Steen witnessed one incident when a gang of 80 skinheads took over a compartment and viciously terrified an old lady.
And for the newspapers, the media, this was a gold mine. They loved this and started to build a bit of a moral panic around England. Moral panic is a really important phrase to understand because it's very specific and very accurate. It's when you have a problem in society and the general public hear about this problem and they get very scared.
Oh God, that happens all the time. A mass movement based on the false or exaggerated perception that some culture, behavior, or group of people is dangerously deviant and possess a threat to society's value and interests. Moral panics are generally fueled by media coverage of social issues. This is happening in America right now. It's happening again.
Problem in society and the general public hear about this problem and they get very scared. So scared, in fact, that they start saying solutions, big ideas on how to fix this massive problem that far exceed the reality of the actual size of the problem.
Yes.
However, in the case...
Yo, we're about to deport millions of Americans. It's the same thing.
Of the skinhead, it kind of became like a self-fulfilling prophecy. The media was calling all skinheads hooligans that you should be scared of and keep your children away from. And so it led more skinheads to kind of lean into that image a bit. Skinhead was the new edgy taboo counterculture that was scaring middle-class Michael and Marjorie. And then, all of a sudden, it died.
Skinheads will disappear. There are signs of that already. A new trend will replace it, and the gangs could continue under different names, but in the same areas.
The 70s was like the era of glam rock and disco. Off at the back of the 60s, everyone was, all hopped up on the hippie peace and love stuff. And the skinhead aesthetic didn't really align with the time. And so many skinheads left. They grew out their hair, and they started to listen to David Bowie, and they moved on with their lives. However, there is one thing that had not gone out of fashion, and that was the National Front. The NF was still doing their thing, just racisming around. And they were pretty sad that the skinhead was kind of dying because they were a bit of a useful tool for them. And so it left them angry at the world. An anger that the National Front realised, if we can just point this in the right direction, we're onto something. But the problem was that into the mid-70s, they disappeared. Well, that was until the second wave of skinheads.
I'm still surprised that skinheads started in the 60s. Peace and love, y'all. Come on.
The second wave of skinheads. The second wave of skinhead really came around when punk started to become popular. I didn't know this, but originally the punks were actually more of I guess you could say middle classy, like the art kids. Your soft mate who does gender studies. He was more likely to be a punk. But that would all change with one band, and that was Sham 69. Sham 69 brought punk to the working class. Their lyrics were kind of anti-establishment. They had a lot of political populism. The music had this cool...
I've never heard of this. Verse 1, for once in my life I've got something to say. I want to say it now, for now is today. Right? Life has been given to grab and enjoy, so let's all grab and let's all enjoy. Those aren't very punky lyrics. If the kids are united, they will never be divided. If the kids are united, they will never be divided. Just take a look around you. What do you see? Kids with feelings like you and me. Understand him and he'll understand you. For you are him and he is you. Goo-goo-goo-jube.
Kind of like anti-establishment. They had a lot of political populism. The music had this cool energy. They would use like football chants, which I must say was pretty genius because it made it like the soundtrack for football hooligans. But at the same time, there was another genre called two-tone. This was this like fast-paced kind of punk-sounding reggae type of music. And it was truly a combination, clearly, of black Jamaican culture and white working class culture. Bands like The Specials, The Selector, and The Beat. All these bands were multicultural. You can see it with your eyes if you look at them. And they were skinheads. The Specials had a song called Skinhead Symphony. All of this had caused a resurgence in skinheads by the late 70s. People were dressing like it again. It was popular, but it also started to cause a rift in skinheads.
Well, yeah. Are they on iTunes Music? Show me on Apple Music. The Specials. Right. What's their top song? A Message to You, Rudy. Okay. It actually sounds really good sonically. Oh, it's been remastered. Maybe that's why. Ooh, I like it. Yo, I like it. I like the Specials. I'm down.
These musicians are outcasts, the lepers of the music business. They've been banned by the radio stations, boycotted by record shops, blacklisted by promoters. The landlord thinks he's booked a country and western band. He couldn't be further from the truth.
So how do I explain Oi? Oi was a subgenre of punk, came around in the late 70s, and basically it was blokes just not in a good mood. From what I can tell, Sham 69 never referred to themselves as Oi. It was like a label given to them retrospectively. But them, along with Angelic Upstarts, the Foreskins, you know, I have to read it, The Business, Anti-Establishment, Blitz, The Bloods. These bands weren't explicitly racist. In fact, many of them were openly anti-racist. We'll get more into that in a second. But regardless, it became a genre associated with far-right neo-Nazi skinheads. And
they're called the Foreskins because when things get hard, they disappear.
It became a genre associated with far-right neo-Nazi skinheads. And this was a problem. The two-tone bands, who also had a massive skinhead fan base, bands like The Specials, who had black people playing the music that is clearly Jamaican influence. They were literally playing the music, and some of the skinheads in front of them were Sikh heiling at them.
You know, if you're playing, you have maybe the first 4 or 5 rows all Zeke heiling at the stage, at some stage during your set. And the only way that you could deal with it would be to stop the gig. And then a skinhead ambassador would come upstairs and sort of tap on the door and say, "Are you coming back on?" And you go, "No, we're not." You know, all your mates are all Zeke heiling at us.
I just wonder, like, the level of mental gymnastics these racist skinheads had to go through.
Yeah.
Where they're sitting listening to Jamaican music, all the while being neo-Nazi. I just don't know how they did that in their brain.
Yeah.
It was strange.
Part of being a skinhead is to be a nationalist, to be patriotic and proud of your country and proud of your race. There's a lot said about skinheads being started from blacks and these them, but I don't think that's right at all. I mean, I've heard these rude boys or whatever they're called, but I don't consider them to be skinheads anyway. I think.
Oh, weird. I feel like this is happening again. Sorry to stop it. I don't have anything to say. I'm just absorbing this. There are some mental gymnastics going on right now. Wow.
Skinheads is a white working class thing, really.
And so, as you'd expect, Oi bands were seeing lots of violence at their gigs. You know, places having riots, getting shut down. And this was causing bother for the bands. The bands were starting to get fed up, and this led to an opposition.
We're against racism in all facets of British life.
We want rebel music, street music, music that breaks down people's fear of one another.
So look, it's 1976. England's just going mental. We're all now racist, apparently. Eric Clapton, David Bowie, popular artists of the time were coming out, saying racist things on stage, and not just saying it like how people use the terms now, like genuinely, they liked Hitler. And with...
What does it say? Clapton continuing to take home the top prize for dumbest blank on this planet. This is the man who wants you to go outside while he sits all safe in his mansion with the best doctors available to him. Blank Jamaicans don't belong here. We don't want them here. This is England. This is a white country. We don't want any black, blank, and blank living here. We need to make clear to them they are not welcome. England is for white people, man. This is Great Britain, a white country. What is happening to us? Eric. What? In an interview with Playboy magazine in the 1970s, Bowie claimed Adolf Hitler was one of the first rock stars. Okay, that's not necessarily a compliment. Followed by other comments concerning fascism. There were also reports that he was interested in Nazi memorabilia, that his mother was an Oswald Mosley supporter, and that Bowie once gave fans a Nazi salute. Okay. Just let that wash over me. If I was a big David Bowie fan, that might bother me, but I'm not.
And with that, there were racist attacks all across England in the streets. You would also have just violence everywhere. There was anti-fascist groups that were now fighting against the racists. National Front was starting to put candidates forward for political elections. And so because rock music was starting to get tied in, especially Oi, Rock Against Racism came out as like a series of concerts to try and bring some racial harmony together. Sham 69 took the opportunity to perform here to just kind of dispel of the rumors that they were racist.
Great.
Because it was very clear that they had a very large neo-Nazi following. After that performance, as you'd expect, the neo-Nazis didn't like it. Leading up to 1979, at a concert at the Rainbow Theatre in Finsbury Park, which the National Front went to, broke it up, they were fighting, rushing the stage, and after that, Sham 69 just stopped playing gigs altogether.
No. That's not good. Don't give up. Their Wikipedia does not mention this show. From the archive, 21 September 1979, a wimp's eye view of punk rock gigs. Flamboyant posters, punk slogans, and other intimations of adolescence erupt suddenly like acne across my daughter's bedroom walls as I crawl about the floor, rounding up soiled undergarments. Unsmiling groups like the Boomtown Rats, the Stranglers, and the Clash gaze down at me, and frankly, they get on my nerves.
But then somehow it got worse.
This burnout shell is all that's left of the last place that band, the Four Skins, played in. This is the Hambra Tavern in Southall, a largely Asian immigrant area. And it was here that three so-called Oi bands, including the Four Skins, came on July the 3rd to play a concert. Some of the skinheads assaulted elderly Asians in the street, and they daubed shop windows with National Front slogans. Later that night, the Asians retaliated, and what followed turned into a full-scale race battle.
5 hours of rioting between the police, the local community, skinheads. 120 people were injured. Cars were burnt down. A tavern was burnt down. It was rather peak.
Naivety is probably the right word when you examine the whole style of the Oi bands. They're pro-violence, anti-black, anti-police. It's no wonder they attract Nazi skinhead followers.
And so look, you've had all of this stuff happening, and the media is obviously talking about this. Oi is now just branded as a neo-Nazi music genre. Skinheads as well are thrown into that. And most of the music industry that was supporting Oi bands just started to pull those bands out because they didn't want, obviously, anything to do with any of this.
The music trade quickly decided that Oi music was too closely associated with extremist politics for comfort.
Y'all, I've never heard of the genre Oi music. The only thing I know about Oi is people going, Oi, Oi, and a song, like a concert chant. Is that where it comes from? Are they related?
And that violence, whether it came from left or right, was bad for business.
And what all that left, basically, was the people who were in the Oi genre, who were white supremacists, neo-Nazi, etc. Now all the sane, normal people had left. Oi was just their playground to enjoy.
Oh. So people were turned off by the racial stuff and the violence, and they left. The people that remained were the more extremists. That's happening now. It's happening now.
There were still some skinheads holding on, trying to fight back a bit. Bands like the Angelic Upstarts, and there were skinheads that even made an organisation called Sharps, which was skinheads against racial prejudice. So all of the non-racist skins would come and fight the racist skins, which, although it was good that they were against it, it just meant that the whole subculture was just this violent mess, always getting into fights. And so if you're just a normal bruh who just wants to wear clothes and dance to music, it kind of just become a little off-putting at this point. And so by the late 80s into like even now the 90s, the image of the skinhead was just fucked. You now had like white supremacist bands like Screwdriver, who are on a music promotion network, who are literally neo-Nazis called Blood and Honor, openly racist, connections to the National Front, links to Combat 18, which were like a neo-Nazi terrorist group. And the skinheads now were firmly used as like the foot soldiers to do the dirty work of the National Front and other racist parties. And so it wasn't looking very good for the skinheads. Sadly, after this, it kind of left the skinheads where they are now. All around the world, the extreme right movements, neo-Nazis, have often adopted the skinhead look. It has changed though. If you look closely at what the original skinheads look like, now it's far more military looking. They mainly wear black military boots instead of like the red Doc Martens. And now they're more so completely bald as opposed to like the number 2, number 3 shaved. There's less sideburns, more swastikas. And sadly, this aesthetic has just become synonymous with like the extreme right. They're literally all across the world. You see it in Germany, Poland, America, obviously England, somehow Malaysia. I don't know.
Di Malaysia dibagi pada 3 macam belah-belah skinhead ni.
And there's been lots of iconic films.
Malaysian skinheads? In Malaysia, these are 3 types of skinheads. Oh, there are 3 types of skinheads. What's their, do they hate themselves? Hang on. I gotta look that up. That's fascinating. Malaysian skinheads. Oh, okay. Malaysian skinheads are anti-Jewish and LGBTQ+.
Dibagi pada 3 macam belah-belah skinhead ni.
And there's been lots of iconic films made about this period in history. And it's just really sad seeing this movement, this subculture that in the beginning was really cool. It was bringing together different ideas, making new things, showing that we can have differences but still enjoy each other's cultures. And it just, for the most part, at least in people's minds, just devolved into extreme racism.
Well, a black man, right, they came to this country first. They were exploited against, right, they were kicked out, and now what's happening? What's happening now? They're just getting everything that we want. We're getting exploited against. We're the ones that are being put down.
Often you see it with these violent subcultures that they tend to attract a certain type of young man who is raised in a certain type of situation because they offer them a way of feeling powerful and strong in society.
That's happening now.
Fear them. The skinhead was an inherently aggressive and it's kind of scary look. And so the radical far-right movements can see this opportunity. They just have to offer some solution, some radical ideology, and a scapegoat to point at, which in this case was migrants. It was a perfect storm that happened in England where this sort of racist rhetoric was rising and this subculture just happened to have some connection to it. It's very hard to imagine that the skinhead could ever shake this image now. It's like you couldn't really see the hippies ever being disattached from peace, love, and drugs. So I'm going to end with like what happened to the skinhead. I mean, really, yeah, most of it got swept up into like the far right and stuff like that. There are still some OGs that are kind of holding on to the good old days. You even get some young people who aren't racist who are still attracted to it. But what happened in the 90s was very important. A new subculture would come along that would completely destroy racial barriers, class barriers, and brain chemistry. And that is the ravers. Make sure you subscribe because I will be making that video very soon. You can follow me on Twitch where I'll be showing my research for the raver video. I go live 3 p.m. on Wednesdays. Subscribe. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.
Okay. So the ravers, skinheads became ravers. That's interesting. I love when cultures collide and mix up. There's something about it that makes me feel like there's hope for humanity. But in this case, some assholes decided to brainwash people. It's happening again, y'all. It's happening again. We need immigrants. Immigrants are good. We're not having enough babies. We need more people. I don't have the answer, but... I wish I had some wisdom to give at this point, but I do not. But these same kind of fears that these skinheads were talking about are happening now. There's us and the others. And the others are taking our jobs, they're making our lives horrible, they're killing us, they're raping us. It's always the others. The others, they're doing this thing to us. It's because of them. But is it really? Most of the time, not. But it makes a good story. It's easy to understand. It's not complex. But the truth is complex. I don't know, y'all. But it looks like skinheads are just out there raving now, having a good time, dancing. That's good, right? That's a move towards good-hearted humanity, I think, right? It would be great if it could happen without the drugs. But, whatever. I want to party with the skinheads. The newer ones, not the older ones. Y'all be sure to go to Jimmy the Giant, like and subscribe. I'd like to thank my patrons on Patreon. I'd like to thank my Buy Me a Coffee folks. Thank y'all for watching this with me. And I'll see y'all next time. Later.